Hey everybody, welcome to the Hyderabad Power Platform user group. This is our May 2023 meetup, and thank you so much for joining here. Joining us on a Saturday. I know it's very important to learn over the technology that you want, but equally spend time. So thank you so much for joining us today. So, in terms of our agenda today, we have two speakers with us and we have two unique sessions. So, the first session is going to be presented by Shrushti Shah. She is a cloud and Microsoft 365 consultant and works with Rapid Circle. She is also a Microsoft MVP for MS 365 apps and services. And today she is going to talk about create and consume custom connectors in Power Platform. The second session for the day, it's by Ramit Paul. He's also a Microsoft MVP for business applications and works at EY. The topic for his session today is asset leasing concept and how to in Microsoft Dynamics finance and operations. So if you are an enthusiast about Dynamics 365 finance and operations, you should stay till the end and wait for Ramit's session. So, with that, Shrishti, thank you so much for coming to the Hyderabad Power Platform user group today and sharing this topic for custom connectors. I know that it is one of the most important topics one should know while they're working on Power Platform. So, thank you so much for presenting on it. Shrishti, over to you now.
Yeah, I was speaking on mute. Sorry for that.
No
Yeah.
problem.
Thank you so much, Ritika, for having me over here. And yeah, special thanks to you and Yash both, and also to Hyderabad Power Platform User Group. Thank you so much for having me. So, as Ritika briefly introduced myself, so what I work on is majorly around Power Platform or M365 and also on Azure infrastructure as a code. So that is all with what I work on, and I am coming from a company, Rapid Circle. And today, what I'll be doing is I'll quickly walk you through about custom connectors. So before we dive into today's session, and today is going to be very interesting. I'm going to cover open AI integration, and right now the buzzword in the Microsoft industry is Copilot, OpenAI, and integrating Chat GPT. So I think everyone of you might now be aware about what chat gpt is and how you can utilize and make the most of it. So one such scenario I have covered today, so I'll walk you through that. Before that, so today you'll not be seeing me walking through any of the slides. So majorly whenever I take any sessions, I keep my slides very short. I try to have a live demo so that you all can work along with me. You all can have a hands-on experience so that I just don't keep on blabbering more. So yeah, that's let me just quickly introduce myself. I am a Microsoft MVP, and I also write couple of blogs. I have my blog website as well, where you can find my blogs based on either Teams apps creation or Power Platform application or any of the nitty gritties of Microsoft 365 and also Azure. So I keep writing on C Sharp Corner as well, for which I was awarded C Sharp Corner MVP, and you will find me speaking across various conferences and user group. So that's about me. Today's agenda, this is the most beautiful part about today's uh, for which we are meeting today. So what am I going to cover is what are connectors basically. So first we'll go and walk through. First I'll talk about what exactly connectors are, and why was a need for custom connector, like why like why Microsoft thought about it, and how people are utilizing it in their business scenario in their organizations. Next is I'll walk through about OpenAI API and how you can use OpenAI APIs. And this is just a scenario which I've taken. If you have already some APIs which you are working on, be third party APIs, which is just for your application and you have not used it across Power Platform, then how you can use that. We'll talk about it. How you can create custom connectors. So this is a scenario which I've taken. I'm going to use leverage OpenAI API, and I'm going to create custom connector from scratch using that API, and how I'm going to consume it using Power Apps or Power Automate. I'll walk through that. So I have this mid slide. I don't have any more content to show because I want to show it live. Now, what am I going to do is I'm going to quickly cover like what exactly connectors are and how you can find the connectors in your Power Platform. So when I talk about Power Platform, right, it is a very broad category now. You have so many things. Firstly, it is Power Automate, Power Apps, Power Pages, AI Builder, Power Virtual Agent, connectors, data words. You might be hearing all of these terms at all, right? In any conferences, any sessions, or any blog when you read about Power Platform. So where these connectors exactly fit in? So when I talk about connector, this is my Power Platform, right? Power Automate. And in my Power Automate, you will always see one section in the left navigation, which is connectors. Now, when I talk about connectors, what it helps you to do, how you can utilize it, so you might not able to relate it exactly because you are not using connectors like this. You are not used to seeing connectors like this. What you ideally do is you go to your flow section, you create a flow. Let me create an instant cloud flow. This is just a scenario for explaining that what exactly connectors are, so that you can relate it very well when someone says about connectors or actions or any of those jargons of Microsoft Power Platform. So now I am in the Power Automate, which we all are well versed with, where we can go ahead and create business process flows, automated flows, or scheduled flows, right? Now when I come to the Power Automate, now I have created an instant cloud flow, right? In instant cloud flow, what am I doing is I'm just going to do test it manually. So whenever I'll trigger this flow, this will run, right? Now, while adding an operation or while adding, right, you click on add button. What you see here is you can see search connectors and actions. When we talk about connectors and actions, these are two different things. Connectors is basically when you're trying to connect one system or one service to the another service. Now, right now, I am in Power Automate. Now, what I want to do is I want to grab all the or I want to send email, a reminder or notification, right? So I'm going to talk from my Power Automate to my Outlook email. These are two different services, correct? Now, how will I communicate with Outlook or my Teams notification or any mail notification for, let's say, Gmail or anything? How am I going to talk about this different service? Either via an API, no other way to communicate, right? You will need an API to communicate. Now, you don't ideally see those APIs here because those are wrapped in the form of a connector. Now, let me pick up one such connector, send an email. Now I'll okay, I chose the wrong one. Okay, let it be. Now this is an email connector, right? So as you can see the Outlook logo as well, so that you can understand. Okay, this connector which I'm using is of Outlook, and I'm consuming a service of Outlook. Now here, what you are able to see is a wrapper or a wrap around your API. This was an API which was created. This API was forward and email API. At the behind the scenes, it is an API. What you are doing is you are just passing the values to it so that your API will take these values, it will perform necessary operation. When I talk about API, it is either it either performs CRUD operation. Either it will create something, either it will get something, update, delete, or any of those operations you can perform by API. One such operation is forward an email. So while forwarding an email, what am I doing is I'm just forwarding it to someone, right? Which email I want to forward to. So this is one variable, one value which I am passing to this key. Whom I want to forward this to. This is a two. And all these you are seeing parameters. These are all the parameters which I am passing, for which I am passing the value, and behind the scenes it is doing some action for me. So this is one example of a connector. Now when I pick up another from my bunch of actions, so here you can see these services. For all these services, there is a connector created. Now, when you internally work with any of the Microsoft 365, let's say Planner, any of the services which Microsoft has out of the box, Planner, Task, Email, SharePoint, Teams, or any Office 365, or all these, these are all the connectors. For all the services, you will find the connector. One part is these are built-in connectors. Now, there is a possibility that you will find a connector for Google or for any other third party application, Automatica, Absentify. These are all the third party applications. These are not Microsoft applications, but still you will find the connector because these are verified connectors published via those organization. Hence, you are finding it here. Now, when I talk about custom connector, how different it is from the idle connector, it is not at all different. One thing is let's say you have in your organization, maybe your organization has created a third party application. Let's say for example you are grabbing all that is a event uh, application. It has all the event information whichever you're conducting, or all the attendee information, and when those events are going to be scheduled, all the event information. Let's say for example Hyderabad user group, they have created the application for themselves. It is hosted on Azure. Now they also have the APIs which they have created, maybe fetch all the events, or grab all the attendee information, post the information to the events or everything. When you have such application created and you also have those APIs, so for that, how you can use those APIs into your Power Automate? That is when custom connectors come into picture. Microsoft is not providing you because they don't have information about your application. It is your organization application which you are using and you want to interact, you want to automate that on top of a Power Platform. That is why you are creating a custom connector. So whenever you see custom connector or hear about custom connector, it is nothing but an API, a wrapper which is created on top of API, and it will also be seen in such thing here. Like you are seeing this connector pane, you can also see your custom connector here. There is a section for custom connector, and all of the custom connector will start floating here. And when in your organization someone wants to talk with your custom connector or wants to talk with the API, let's say whenever an event Hyderabad user group publishes, I want an email notification or I want a notification to be sent to my teams. So how you'll do that? Definitely we'll need an integration from that third party application to your teams, right? Using that API. That is how custom connector will bridge that gap for you. So this is what custom connector is and how you can utilize. Now, how you can create custom connector if you already have an API, or be it either in your Swagger or Postman or any of that, for let's say, how you can go ahead and do that, we'll go and see. So when I talk about connectors, you can find connectors at one place. So this is the connectors panel. I go back from my Power Automate now. Here you will find all the connectors. So right now you are seeing all the connectors, and the standard ones are, so there are different ways Microsoft has categorized it. Standard connectors are basically the connectors which are in-house or which are your Microsoft integration connectors. So you will find it all the Microsoft services and all the connectors created here. You also have premium connectors. So let's say there are some SQL integrations. Whenever you talk with a SQL on-prem, you will have API created, and you can talk with your SQL database via SQL collector. Premium connectors are different because you have to, there is a add-on licensing payment altogether different. Standard connectors are ready to consume. Whenever you have a license for Power Automate, you can directly consume standard connectors. While for premium, you'll have to, for few days, it will be a free trial. But if you are using it for the production or go live environment, then definitely you will need a licensing to consume it. Custom connectors, you'll not find it here. There is a different section for custom connectors. Yeah, here I am. For the today's topic, we are going to stay here in the custom connectors pane, and we are going to see how we use it in Power Up and Power Automate. So this is the custom connector. And how you can go ahead and create is, there are different ways of creating a custom connector. Either you can create it from blank. So let's say you have just an API, whether that API will fetch some data or write some data or post any of those operations it can perform. You can go ahead and create it from blank. Or if there is an API created, or either you're using an Azure service, you can create it from Azure as well. This is what it is in preview right now. Open API. So either you have an Open API file. From that, you can directly consume. By Open API file, I mean you have a Swagger, right? You have already those API header, foot, response request, and everything is incorporated into a Swagger file. You can directly use that Swagger, and it will create a custom connector for you, just with few modifications. Or from URL, or from a Postman collection, or from a GitHub. From these all options, you can create your custom connectors. For today's scenario, what am I going to do is, I'll firstly give you a brief about how am I consuming an open API which I'm using, and how am I creating a custom connector on top of that. So this is how you will be creating a custom connector. Right now, you see that I have already created some custom connectors. First is from OpenAI. I'm creating, consuming create image, or how can I get the images from the prompts of ChatGPT, and I'm consuming that API. Next is sentiment analysis and some of the other operations which I was performing. So let's just go ahead and see OpenAI first. so that we understand how and what we are going to do today. So I am logged into OpenAI platform.openai.com. I already have created an account for myself. Hence, I'm able to gather all this information. I can consume the API keys of OpenAI. So in OpenAI, what I going to do is you can just find a beautiful introduction. This is the README file where you can find the documentation about what OpenAI is and what all models it is working with. So when I talk about models, I just quickly let me go to the examples. Yeah. So what OpenAI offers is it offers all these models. When I talk about models, there is a AI model which is built in by OpenAI, and using that model, there is also a API which is created so that you can interact with these models. Okay. So these are all the models which you can see: Q&A, text to command, image generation, classification, SQL translate, n number of models you can see here. What am I going to do is I'm going to search for image. Today's topic will be around image generation. Let me just create image. I think it is. I'm not able to find it. Just a second. Yeah. So you can find your examples. Those were the examples I was searching for the wrong. I was searching in the wrong place. Sorry for that. But these are the models which I'm going to consume: images, audio, files, moderations, engines. These are all the models they have created. And on top of this, there are also the APIs which are created. For chat, let's say there is a chat completion API which they have created. What it does is you just have to give some text and it will complete it on its own. That is what the model is doing. Next is images. We are going to use this for the today's session. So in this image, create image, what am I going to do is, if let's say I'll give a text that I want Microsoft Redmond Office images, just like how you do it in Google, right? But this is not just limited to Google. So how you type in Google that, okay, give me the images of the Microsoft Redmond Office. It is not just limited to that. What you can do is, let's say I want an image of Apple, which is byted, which is side byted. It should show a byte and also all the different dimensions of the byted apple. This is how you can give the prompt or the text to your model so that it will give you the exact thing which you're looking for. If you want, we can just see that in the documentation as well, and also with the examples. But this is how the API will look like. I'm going to consume it. So now let me just go ahead and use the API. This is the curl version. This is a JSON format. This is the API. As you can see here, this is OpenAI API. I'm using version 1 slash images slash generations. Once I will key in, this will be my endpoint. And this whole is my endpoint, and this will be my domain. Okay. What all are the headers? Content type and authorization. Definitely this is similar to your any other API when you work with. Content type will be authorization or .json slash json. It will give you the response in the JSON format. How am I authenticating to this API? By using API key. So this is the bearer token which I am forming, and the inputs. This is the body. So this will be a post call. What it will do is it will take the input from the user. So what am I seeing here is a cute baby input, right? What it will fetch me, the images of this prompt. How many images I want? This is the number of the images and the size of the image. Using grabbing this information, you can go ahead and create a custom connector. So this is the same information provided here. Prompt is basically a text which you have to provide. N is how much number of images you want to be generated via this model whenever this will be triggered. Size of the image, you can give the following sizes, or you can give the user to select from the following sizes. Response format, either it can be in the format of the base64 JSON or in the URL. Because it is a image, so you might want to grab it in the form of URL and you might consume it in your later sections or any of the application. And this is the user identification and user identification. These are all the request body parameters, and this is the post API. Now, once you have this much information, so this is just an example. Let's say you have, let's come back to our scenario of Hyderabad user group, right? They created an application, which is a third party application, and they have the get API endpoint. They do have that. while you're using get endpoint, you don't need to provide body, right? It is just a get call. You just have to post that, and the information will be back to you. The response will, you can grab the response. So when I'm posting the get call, what you are doing is get all the events for today, right? Maybe that is some scenario. You just have to get the endpoint, and after the endpoint, you just have to configure the request of your API, the response of your API. You're all set. Whenever someone will use this connector, they'll grab the response. Now let's go ahead and see it in action. What I'll do is I'll copy this and I'll open a notepad. Yeah. And I'll paste this. So what am I going to do is I'll need this endpoint, right? And also the different, this body I'll need, so that I'll have to pass to my API. Now let's go to the Power Apps. Yeah. And we'll create a new custom connector from blank. What am I going to do is I'm going to type any name. Hyderabad platform demo. Just go ahead and you can also provide an image. So just like how we saw back in our Power Automate, that you were able to identify the connector by via its service, right? Whether you are going to, whether you're consuming it for Outlook or Teams or SharePoint or any of that sake. So right now, if you want, you have your organization logo. You can provide it here. The background image, description. You open AI API. Okay, I'm going to consume that API, and that will be a HTTPS call. If you can you can see it from here as well. This is the HTTPS endpoint, and this is going to be my host. I'll provide the host. So see, here it is already giving you the hints already that how the host will look like, how you have to provide. I'll give it here. Host doesn't need slashes, backslash. I'll remove that. This will be my host, and I'll go to the next section. So now my general information for the API is done. What am I doing here is I'm just providing that how my connector will look like when someone will call that connector in Power Automate, Power App. How will it pop up, or what is the name of the connector, and something like that. This is the image. This is my description, host, and base URL. Next, security. Now, utmost important part. When you are trying to work with API always will be authenticated once, right? How are you going to authenticate your API? If some of you would have used HTTP trigger, they might be very well aware that how the HTTP connectors which you are using in Power Automate, how do we authenticate that? Either via Azure AD app registration or username, password, something like that. So for APIs, these are the authentication which you can provide. I'm going to use API key because in my API reference, I am consuming OpenAI API and I already have API keys for it. Okay. So now once you have this keyed in, that how you're going to authenticate, give the label, how you're going to create, or how the authentication will happen. So here the label will be authorization. This will show up in my header. So let me come back to my API documentation. In my header, you see that there is an authorization key value pair, authorization with the bearer space token. So I will grab this authorization. I'll go here. An authorization space will be my bearer token. This will be my parameter name, authorization, and it will reside in my header. I'll go to the next section, which is definition. So if you follow this in the top, there is a navigation given. This is the general information of your API. I am setting up the security. How am I going to authenticate my API? Next is definition. In the reference documentation, you see the OpenAI definition, right? How you are defining your API. Now let's go ahead and see that. Let me come back to the definition. Oops. I'll add a new action. So right now I'm creating an API connector. This connector might have multiple actions. So let's say get, post, delete, update. Those are all the actions. I'll add a new action. And what am I going to do is I'm going to give some summary. I can also import it from sample. Let me just grab that. Yeah. Here, what am I doing is I'm going to create a request, but this request will be from a sample. I'll fill the details later, but I want to show how the request will look like. Right now we are doing a post call, so I'll select a post. I'll grab the endpoint from here and I'll post it in this URL section. Headers, already we covered the authorization in the security section. So we'll not add that header again here. We'll just add content type.json. So let's just grab this and we'll paste it in here. Once I have that, I just have to add the body. In my body, I can give the sample response as it is, this thing, and I want to import. Now my request is ready. Once you have the request ready, you can see the details that this is the API post request. This is the URL. These are the headers. You can go ahead and edit. Content type, the default value will be application/JSON. I will give the default value. Is this required? Yes, it is required, but I'll keep it internal. I don't want users to enter it. This will be a string. Done. I'll come back. My header, which is the content type, is now edited. In edit, I can see the application/JSON as the default value. It is required and internal. The type is string because this is a string type of. You can also give drop down. Right now, this is a header, so you don't need to give static or dynamic values. We'll see that for the other information. So now my header is set. In the body, let's just go ahead and edit. You can see body. Yes, it is required because it is a post call. It should be a required one. In my body, you can see I did not give any of the keys and prompt size. How it created is by using that sample, right? We imported from a sample. So using that itself, it created few of the key for me, key of the body. So as you can see, this N is the number of images which I want to fetch. Prompt is the text size of the image. Now, this is just a key which it has created. Nothing else it did. So what we are going to do is we're going to edit each of them. What it is the number of images. You can give a default value. Let's go to the definition and give the default to 1. Oops. This is the 1. And this will be an integer of format. This will be important because I want user to add how much number of images they want. You can give it dynamic as well. You can give it disabled. I'll give static, and I'll give them the option to choose from this. You can see what it is saying, comma separated values, use quotes. So now what I want is user can select from the drop down. How I can do that? I can give them the values 1, 5, 10. So they can select from these number of images. Once I do this thing, once I am set with all those information, you can see the updated. You can see it reflecting here. Once you go edit, you'll see all these values reflecting it here. Let's just go ahead and do that for all of them. Prompt, type in your request. So what am I doing is I'm just asking the user that what images you want to grab from this model, what kind of image. So type in your request for fetching images. So this is just a random text which I've added. Default value, you can just refer it from the API. Because this is a required prompt, you can't give a default value, right? But yeah, if you want to test it just via testing for a POC, then you can grab it, give it a default value, and you can test. This is required, this is important, this will be a string. That's it. Come back and we'll update the size. So sizes, we want that what will be the size of the image the user should select. The default value should be 1024, 1024. I'll go back and add it in this. This will be a required important one. Dynamic value, sorry, static. I'll give them 256 cross 256, comma 512 x 512, comma 1024 x 1024. So these are all the options. Sorry. Which user should see. So these I'm getting from this documentation. Once I am done, I'll go back. Now your request is ready. This is how, okay, like this is the body which is ready with all the body parameters. You can come back. This is a request and there is a section for response. So now you can see that the validation is not yet completed because we haven't added any of these operation ID. It is must. It is a GUID string, description and summary. Once you have your API request API ready, whenever you will test it, grab that response from the test and add it in the response, so that the custom connector knows how the response should be whenever it will be used in Power Automate or Power Apps. Okay, we'll do that once we'll test it. Right now we haven't done testing, or we don't have that sample response to be given to our response section. What else is missing is, you can see the beautiful part about custom connector UI. It is navigating me from general to security to definition. I don't have to have a headache of, oh, what next I have to perform. It is giving me all this information along with the validation and everything. Next is operation ID. I'll grab the operation ID. This will be a sample GUID which I can generate. Mm-mm-mm. I'll paste it in here. You can paste any of the operation unique ID which you want. Summary, you can give anything. Maybe I'll give create image for bootcamp, something like this. This is done. Once I have that set in, my validation was successful. Operation does not, this is fine. This is just a warning. Next, okay. Now you might say that you also have Azure functions which were created for those APIs, and you might say that I want to write that code here. Right now, I'm not going to write that code here because I'm showing you how you can create from blank with this simplified manner if you have the API and authentication in place. So this is the code where you can go ahead and write your piece of code. This is a .NET. You can go ahead and do that. While testing, the utmost important part, unless you test your API, oh yeah. So my bad. What it is showing me, unless I create create a custom connector, I will not be able to test it. So what we'll do is we'll quickly create the custom connector so that we can test. It will take some seconds to create. Till then, okay, let's just wait. Yeah, the custom connector is created. Now you can see the connection. You have to create a connection because right now the connection is not in place. We are creating this for the first time. This is the uh, text summary object ID which I was seeing. You can type in anything right now. I just wanted to give a unique name, so I added this GUID. You have to give a unique name for this section for operation. Once you have that set in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to test my custom connector whether it is working fine or not. I'll create a new connection. I'm going to pass in bearer authorization. I'll grab the key. Oops, I'll have to create a new one. I'll grab it. I'll go here. One thing is missing, bearer space token. We have to provide in that format. So what am I going to do is I'm going to add in. Yeah, the connection should be in place. Refresh. Connection is created. Now, what am I going to do is I'm going to write Microsoft Redmond this with greenery, surrounded by greenery. Let's just give something. Okay, I want one image. Let's test it. Wow. You see, I already got an information and it is in the form of URL. Let's go ahead and test whether, because the API is 200, it has successfully ran, but we have to see whether it got me the correct result or not. Let's just go ahead, paste it here. Wow. Exact input which I gave, I want a Redmond office which was surrounded by greenery. It got me office picture, which is a Microsoft Office picture with the greenery around it, surrounding to it. So this is how beautifully you can, the response, definitely this was a model which did those things. But what I will do is I'll grab this response and we were left to do something, right? If you remember, we did not add the default response. I want to add a default response. This will be my default response. And you can provide the headers, but I don't want to provide that. I'll import it. I'll update my connector. So right now, what you saw, let's just go ahead till the time it is updating. What we did is, what I have done is I used a model which is a DALI model which OpenAI has created. We'll see the documentation quickly. This is the image generation documentation. This is the DALI preview application. I have just consumed this model, this API, which was doing some operation. This was a model which was created, and what I did is I just give a prompt that, okay, grab, do something, take this prompt and give me the image, which is the best. Which is one of the best response of that text. So what it does, it did the same thing. Same thing you will find it here in the examples. What they are providing is they gave a prompt of a white Siamese cat. This is a type of kind of cat which they wanted to show. So for this prompt, it gave the best response. So when a model runs behind the scene, this is similar to your AI builder, right? In AI builder, what we do, we create a model. We train that model to give 99 percentile answer, like that percentage should match 90, should go beyond 95%, so that we understand that this model is working correctly. This is a good model, and it is not like not working fine, because the more data you give to a model, the more correct answers or more right results you are able to fetch from that. So these are the few prompt examples. So we did the same thing. We asked a custom connector to give me the response of a prompt text. It did that. Now it also has the response in place. Let's just go ahead, and this was the custom connector which we created. If I want to share this custom connector with someone, I can go ahead and share it. Currently, I created it, so it is just shared with me, but you can share. What else information you can see is it is authenticated by API key. So you can understand how authentication is handled for this custom connector. Now, let me just go ahead and show you something else which I want to show. For this custom connector right now, if you see in the definition, there is just one definition, one action, which is create an image for a prompt. If I want to add another action, let's say I want to generate, fetch me, let's say chat gpt, right? You have a chat gpt API. For this input, give me the information or give me the text. You can add another action to it as well. So for one custom connector, you can have multiple actions attached to it. The ideal scenario is you are just in, curating a box wherein you are just giving some of the actions to that particular section. So this is kind of a sectionizing thing wherein you will understand, or the admin can understand that, okay, this connector is created using OpenAI. Hence, this is a OpenAI box in which I can consume all the OpenAI APIs. And how you are going to consume? By using each different actions in it. So you can create new actions as well. It is not like for one custom connector, I can only have one scenario filled in, which is one action, getting or posting or updating it. No, you can have n number of actions created. You can also have triggers. I just gave you an example of action, but you can also have a trigger, and you can also have policy in place by adding new policies. Right now, it was very simple, a plain vanilla custom connector, creating an action so that you can consume. I'm not going to update it. I'll close this, and we'll see how you can utilize this in your Power application or Power Automate as well. For that, what I did is I gathered some information from the reference documentation, and I've created an application. So this is the OpenAI app which I created to consume the OpenAI API using custom connector. Let's go ahead and see. Right now you're seeing DALI, which is why, because I used DALI model, which was the create image generation API that is using behind the scenes. So what it is doing is this API, it takes a prompt from you and it will generate an image. You also have the flexibility to fetch number of images and the size, what size of image you want to fetch. This is what it is doing. Details, we saw all of these things. This is the create image API which we leveraged. This is the endpoint with the header and the authentication in place. What all are the body parameters? Prompt, size of the image, and the number of images. Let's see live in action. Now let me just go ahead and add in what is Microsoft. OpenAI models. Let us see what it gives me back. Choose a number of image. I want to grab one image, let's just say, and I want to grab the image of size 512 512. I'll generate an image and the image should pop up. Let's just wait. You might be curious to know that what am I doing? How have I connected it with these power apps? We'll quickly see that. But if you observe what I typed in, let me just type in 256 or 256 if it can show me the whole correct image. Yeah. Wow. Let's just key in something which is relevant to our use case. What power apps? Let's just generate an image for the power app. What it gives me back, let's see. Wow. You see that what it is giving me the most appropriate result of the image. Now, when I type in Microsoft Power App, only then it will be able to understand, okay, I want to grab the Microsoft Power App image. Wow. These are the different answers it is giving me. Bit weird, but let's just find something which is relevant. If it gives the correct answer. Hmm. This is the model which is working behind the scenes and it has to grab the utmost correct image. So it is giving me back. Now let's just see how did I consume that API and I'm using it. If you observe here, what am I doing? This is just the sample screen on select and data connector. Yeah. So two utmost important things to keep in mind. So many of you might already have worked with different data connectors like SharePoint or SQL database or Office 65 and any of the data connectors for let's say. Now when I come to the data connector, what have I done is I've added the data connector, which is my custom connector here. Once I've added the custom connector, what you have to do is you just have to add data and what was the name of that? Yeah, I'll just give it here. You see, I'm able to grab this. I'll connect to this. Once I've connected, I can leverage the action or whatever actions is created. I can leverage that and I can utilize in my Power App or Power Automate. So in on my button click, what am I doing? I am using that open. This is the action name which I had keyed in previously. So what you can do is we'll go to this thing. My action name was that GUID definition. This is a definition summary, description, and operation ID. This is the unique string. This will be called in your here. Dot create image is the action it is performing. Once you have that in, what all information, so this is the body which we just tested in our section here. In the test section you are passing in three values to the parameter. Same thing you have to do in your Power Automate or Power App. You have to pass three values. What am I doing? I'm passing the prompt, the size, and the select number of images and the size. Once I have that, I'm running it, right? I'm not connecting it to a flow, Power Automate, nothing. I'm just hitting that API custom connector directly. Once I hit that, I have that information. I'm grabbing it in a variable and I'm showing it in image. This is how you can use custom connector into your Power Apps. Just like this, you don't have to call Power Automate to do this bunch of work for you. You can directly call it. Now, if you would ask me how I can do that same thing in my Power Automate, let's just go in my Power Automate flow and I will create a new flow. We'll create a automated, instant cloud flow. Because I don't have any trigger right now, I will manually trigger it. What you can do is you can ask the user to add the number of image, give the prompt, and also so whenever this flow will be running, you can grab this information. So you can also interact or integrate your Power Automate with Power Apps as well. And also you can ask the user to key in all those three information. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to use the custom connector. This was the OpenAI custom connector. I want to create image. So this was the one example which I created previously. And what am I doing? I'm going to type in a prompt. Grab me the coffee cafe. Yes, coffee cafe in India. Okay, I want one image and I want the size should be this. Now let's go ahead. One important thing is connection. So as you can see, I did not connect it with my credentials. It was already there. Why? Because whenever you create a custom character, it is associated with some connection, right? And that connection is your authentication of your API. That is what it is going to use. Now let me just quickly test it so that we can see it in action. The response should be there. Yup, I have the response, which is a 200, and I also got the URL. Grab me this, grab, let me grab this piece of information. Wow, it gave me some results with related to the coffee, but yeah, it's fine. Now, this is how you can consume any scenario. This was just an example that how you can consume Open AI. Right now, this was a Open API which I consumed of Open AI, but it can be any example. Just like I mentioned, you can have your custom application which had custom APIs. You can consume that, and this is how you can create a custom character on top of it. Once you have authentication in place, then you can utilize it anywhere, either it is a Power Automate or Power App, and you can build any scenario on top of that, just like how I did for today's example. This was just the one such use case. Once I have that, you can let your users interact with that API either from a UI screen or from the Power Automates. So this is one of the best scenario which I thought will be fitting for today's custom connectors. One thing before I stop talking and I start taking up the questions is whenever you create a custom connector, you always have to make sure that your request response is very well versed with all the use cases. So right now, when I come to the definition, you see the request is just a request section of your API, but in the response you make sure to handle all the different kind of response, whether it is a 200, 201, 400, all the responses you can add it here. Right now the default this is just going to take a sample JSON for you from the response, but whenever the API that is how your API should be built in. It should be flexible. It should show the error 400 status code, 201 status code, and 200 status code. So if you have a Swagger in place, you can do that as well. So I'll quickly cover that section. Let me just close this and let me go to, yeah. So this was one such scenario which was created using Swagger. So let's say you have your Swagger file, swagger.json, wherein a whole API documentation, like all the request response, everything is in place. And how you can go ahead and create, what you do is just create new connector and import an Open API file. Here, let's say test Swagger. In this, you can directly import your Swagger file. I don't have that right now. Once you have that, I should have, let me just test, but I don't think it is in this machine. It might be in some other. But once you have that, everything will be in place for you. Don't have to add any such details. I'll quickly show how I did this for custom contours to invoicing. So this was created from Swagger, and this is the host of it. Security, definitely you have to maintain the authorization. Definition and everything was created by default. As you can see, these are the n number of actions: get invoice, add invoice, all the different kind of post update, get calls here. And this was the post update with the query, with the body parameter, and also the response and everything. So one, if you have the Swagger file, you don't have to make any modifications. If you want to update any description or name, then you can go ahead and update it, just like how I did it in my scenario. For account ID, you can update the title, default value, etc. But Swagger handles everything. Only few things you might have to incorporate, which is just updating the title and default value, or some settings here and there. Just that's it. Swagger will make your life much easy. But if you don't have Swagger and if you just have an API and if you want to create it from blank, that is also very easy by just following few steps and it is in place. So this was created from Swagger. This was just a sample. This is sample provided by Microsoft. This is also open source. You can use that if you want to do some POC or if you want to try out custom connectors. Once this is done, it is ready to consume. I don't think that is already created, but if it would have been, then I would have shown that. But yeah, this is how custom connectors are built on Power Platform, and you can consume it very well. I'll conclude my today's session with custom connectors in place, and let me just quickly see if there are any questions. Oh, let me stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Srishti, for such a wonderful session today. OpenAI can be very effective when it comes to transforming your apps and automation. I did not know earlier that you were going to present on Open API, but that was really impressive. Thank you so much, for showing us how it can be leveraged in our day-to-day solutions.
Yeah. So basically, just before I leave, right now,
Mhm,
when you observe that there are many chats or many posts revolving around ChatGPT, right? So
mhm,
people want a quick response of their queries. Either it is a
mhm,
code solution or it is any text or any example you can take. So using OpenAI, you can perform such small part of information. So as you saw, I created a sample based on fetching the images, right? We
mhm,
also have another section for uh, get me some response using this chat which I'm going to post in. So let's say create a
mhm.
LinkedIn post for Hyderabad user platform group, right? And
Right.
my model will give me back with the response. So you can you can consume those APIs, you can create custom connectors using that as well. Also
Mhm.
using ChatGPT API, you can very well create with it. So this was just
Definitely.
one such scenario.
Yep, sure. And I think with the introduction of Copilot, there are going to be, many other
OpenAI
capabilities which,
integrations. Yeah,
yes, open AI integration. So, yeah, I'll wait for, any of your videos if you're creating any content around it, because I think
sure.
that is one of the, growing topic in this month or in this time for now.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to curate some of my key important takeaways from Copilot and OpenAI. So please look forward to it.
Okay,
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
sure. And guys, I've shared Shrishti's LinkedIn and blog on the chat earlier. So if you'd like to connect with her in case of any questions, please feel free to drop a message. And you can view her blogs on the blog website. It's also there in the comments, and I just highlighted it on the screen as well.
Thank you so much, Ritika and Yash, for giving me this opportunity. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shrishti. Thank you for coming. I hope you have a
Thank
nice
you.
weekend.
Thank you so much. You too.
Yep.
And
Okay.
handing over to Ramit.
Yep. Thank you. Hey, Ramit, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly fine. Okay, first of all, welcome Ramit to Hyderabad Power Platform User Group, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today. So, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ritika and Yash for arranging this session. I'm, privileged and honored to be here. Thanks for organizing this event. So, shall we wait for
Uh,
6 minutes?
no, I think we can start. If there are any questions on the chat, I'll read it out to you. Otherwise, I will share your LinkedIn and your blog on the chat so people can reach out to you. Because this is going to be live streamed on YouTube, and many people they watch after the event is complete.
Great, awesome.
Okay, so everybody, now we have our second session. It's by Ramit Paul. He's a Microsoft MVP for business applications and currently working with EY. Today, he's going to talk about asset leasing concept and how to in Microsoft Dynamics 365 finance and operations. So, thank you, Ramit, for taking time and talking about this very interesting topic. And now I would like to hand it over to you so you can start and share your screen if you want.
Sure. Let me share.
Okay.
Let me know when you can
Mm-hmm.
see my screen.
Okay.
I need to select
S-
entire screen, right?
Sorry. Ah, yes, entire screen. I see that it is added now. I just added to the stream. Okay, now we can see your screen.
Okay, great. So, thanks once again, Ritika and Yash, and all the organizers for this, Hyderabad community group sessions. And I think the people who is joining, they will definitely get something new today. I'm sure, this session will be very much useful for them. So, thanks for this. Thanks for joining and taking your time and joining the session. So, before I start discussing on the asset leasing, I would like to introduce myself. Like Deepika has mentioned, I am a Microsoft MVP. So I was awarded MVP on 2022 December, and I have, if you want to reach out to me, you can connect me with LinkedIn. I have just added a screenshot of the LinkedIn profile, and also I have some, I have a YouTube channel where you can see my videos. Mostly, I make videos on, Dynamics 365 finance and operations, on finance, SCM, and manufacturing areas. So you can get good insights. It's like insights on niche technology or niche features which people might have heard about it, but they don't know how to do this in Dynamics 65. So I try to arrange some videos by some clarification on the concept and the functionalities. So I currently work with as a lead consultant in Ernst& Young. So this is all about a basic introduction about me. So without further delay, I will now discuss about asset leasing. This asset leasing, when you talk about, some people think is it asset management, functionality. Some people think is fixed asset functionality. Some people think is asset maintenance. But it is not like that. It is, if you just give some time to understand the concept for next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm sure you will be able to do this by today. What I have realized is asset leasing functionality not everyone in the industry knows, but if they focus for at least 30 minutes to understand asset leasing is the most easiest concept, and it doesn't require a lot of effort to learn it. So that I will try to cover up. So what is asset leasing? Let's think about, say, you know, uh, a company. I hope you have. If you are not from the finance background, that also fine. But if you're from the finance, then it will be easier for you. But apart from the finance background or ACM background, I will try to make you understand. Say, suppose a company organization is established and they need some assets to run the company, be it to generate revenue, say suppose machines, or some. I'm sure you have heard about leasing of car if you are working in a organization, right? But those cars are not basically company owned. It's basically a company take those assets in lease. So in one word, those are called asset leasing. So why we need a separate module or separate understanding for asset leasing? The reason is accounting standard states even if you are taking a less asset in lease, the ownership of that asset for that period, it lies on you. It's not the responsibility of the of the owner. Like, I am taking a lease of a building, I'm taking a lease of car. So to maintain the accounting of the like depreciation, you know uh, recognition of assets, capitalization, such kind of thing, is lies on the who is taking those assets as lease. This is part of the accounting standard like IFRS 16 in days. So every accounting standard states it's not the owner who will depreciate the asset. Since you are using it as part of lease, you need to do that. That is the main concept and the requirement to understand asset leasing. So in asset leasing, we have three component. One is Mr. Lesser, one is Mr. Lessee, and another is the asset. So what is Mr. Lesser? Who is Mr. Lesser? Who owns the building? Say suppose as an example, building or car. Mr. Lessee, who is he? He is the organization. Say suppose I am working in the implementation. That organization or legal entity is the Mr. Lessee. Okay. So Mr. Lessee comes to the Mr. Lesser that, hey, I want this office on lease. So what Mr. Lesser will discuss? He will say, okay, let's discuss the terms. So in the terms, he can easily give this, as an expenses. Mr. Lessee can incur some expenses, account those as an expenses. What about the terms? There is the catch. So you need to understand that terms and concept about the accounting in the asset leasing. So as I mentioned, accounting framework. If you remember, I talked about the accounting framework states that the ownership or the depreciation accounting has to be maintained by the Mr. Lessee, means the organization who is taking the asset as a lease. So the applicability, it's country wise. The asset leasing applicability IFRS 16, US GAAP, and Ind AS. Okay, and then exemption based on the lease period and fair value of the asset. I will talk about this slowly. Classification, finance lease and operating lease. I will talk about this two part in the next slide. So as I mentioned, finance lease and operating lease. So finance lease is basically, say suppose you are taking, I will just talk in a layman language. So suppose so that you can understand. So suppose you are working in a company and you are eligible to take a car in lease. So some asset like this, you can take that car in future as a ownership. You can take that ownership or transfer the ownership from the company to you. So there is a difference. One lease is something that you can transfer the ownership after giving some payment for a couple of periods. You can take the ownership as per you as your name. And one lease you cannot take that. It's still the ownership will always be lying on the owner of the asset. So that is basically the specification or differentiation of the finance lease and operating lease. If I talk about what I wrote, a finance lease is a lease where the risk and the return get transferred to the lessee, the business owners, as they decide to lease assets for their businesses. An operating lease, on the other hand, is a lease where the risk and the return stays with the lessor. That's the same thing what I've talked about. I've given an example of car. If you take a car as a lease from your company. So now, I'm sorry, let me have some more. So now the question is, I've talked about the concept, but how Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation helping organization in asset leasing? That is the most important agenda of our session today. So I will talk about how this system or the application is helping. Whatever is written in the accounting standard, the all will be fulfilled in asset leasing module. Like one, accounting, as I mentioned, accounting is done in asset leasing module. AL supports, AL means account asset leasing. Asset leasing supports schedule preparation and calculation. Don't get confused. I will talk about this schedule preparation and calculation later on in this session. And asset leasing supports vendor invoice booking. I will also talk about this. Payment to vendor to be made from AP module. So if I keep that first part aside, then I have schedule preparation and calculation, which I will talk about later, and supports vendor invoice booking. So what is vendor invoice booking? Why this is required? Because like if organization taking a asset as a lease, they have to pay those lease amount in monthly basis or the agreed terms. So that is basically the concept of vendor invoice booking. And payment to vendor, it will be done from the AP module. And now, like I mentioned, how Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation is helping organization with this asset leasing module, where in other I would say other ERP system does not provide the or leverage the complex calculation to be calculated in system, but Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation helps organization to calculate those complex calculation based on the asset leasing framework that we will see today. So why I wrote the complex calculation days are over? Say suppose there is no asset leasing module in the ERP. I'm not particularly talking about any in Dynamics, but I'm talking about the other ERP or any ERP system which business is using. If there is no asset leasing module, there the accountant make a macro, and then they get add some logic, and based on that the manual calculation happens. There is a chance to make some mistakes always, since it is a human uh, you know probability they will make some mistakes, and for that reason asset leasing module will help business a lot. So now I'll talk about agreed to take terms. Like Mr. Laser mentioned, let's discuss about the terms. So now we will talk about terms. So terms means in terms which content we will have in lease agreement. One is lease agreement. Lease agreement is what I'm taking. Organization is taking a asset as a lease. Then that is called an agreement. And then these are the components of the asset leasing. Lesser details. Lesser details means the owner of the asset. Lessee details, the organization who is taking the asset as a lease. Lease period means, say suppose you have agreed in a terms that I will take a building up for the for my office for 10 years of lease, right? That is called lease period. Useful life and fair value, I will talk about this later, because it's calculation. But useful life and fair value is like a fair value of an asset, which we call NPV. That I will talk about the formula. Payment terms, in which payment terms the payment will be made to the lessor. Implicit rate is means the calculation, the percentage, which it's not like that if the asset is 1 lakh and asset value is 1 lakh, that without any interest or without any NPV value the asset will be accounted. There will be some implicit rate, and there it comes additional terms and conditions if any. Now we will talk about an example, but I'm taking you through the in PPT. After this PPT I will discuss and I will show you the demo. So agreed terms is mean lease period. Like I mentioned, the lease period from which date to which date the period will be for the asset leasing. So payment terms is for each month for 12 months the $100 the organization is to pay to the lessor, the owner of the asset. Fair value is $10,000 of the asset, and useful life is 10 years. Implicit rate is 8%. Okay, this 8% and all the calculation, it's really not required you to understand in detail if you don't want to, because asset leasing is like a calculation. You just need to put the rate, and the asset leasing module will automatically calculate everything as per the account standard. So if you think that okay, what Ramit is talking about, the complex calculation and all, you just don't need to not need to bothered about it. It's just the agreement you need to take from the consultant or accountant, and you need to just put that value into the system. So now this is the uh, visual presentation what I have done. So now I will talk about the part that which I was talking about, the calculation and all. So while I talk about the accounting standard, accounting part of the asset leasing, there are a couple of things we need to make sure, which is that initial recognition. Initial recognition means, say suppose if you're from the finance background, specifically, you will understand when we capitalize asset, that what we do, we make an acquisition of the asset, and that is a capitalization, acquisition, and then we create a liability. Liability means either if you pay that asset by the bank, there will be no liability, but if you buy that asset from the purchase order, that will be a vendor liability. You need to pay that. Similarly here as well, when you uh, take that asset as a lease, you need to book this initial recognition, which will be right to use asset and to use lease liability. But this lease liability is not anything related to vendor. It's just a liability which you need to pay during the period. And then the next part is that interest recognition. This interest recognition is like you need to understand a little bit this interest recognition. But again, this interest recognition concept you really don't need to know in detail, because if you don't, like I mentioned, if you don't know the complex mathematical formula, system will do that. You don't need to do anything on that part. So just right now you understand interest recognition is a calculation which system will do. So interest recognition is like, say suppose I will make you understand that one. So suppose I have agreed, or I will give an example. Suppose you have $100,000 today. Does this really mean the same $100,000? If you keep this with you, the same $100,000 value will be the same after the 10 years? The answer, of course not. The value of the money is, is going to be decreased. That's how accounting standards states that you have agreed that the fair value of the asset is 10,000, and you are paying throughout the year 100 for 12 months. But ultimately that 100 which you are now paying, the same 100 you will be paying after 24 months. That means you are really not thinking about any interest expenses. That's called NPV value in accounts. But really, you don't need to go into this calculation in detail. But if you want to, I will explain the formula here as well. Depreciation. Now the question you will ask that I am taking that asset as a lease, but why depreciation? Because I don't own that asset. But no, like I mentioned at the early uh, stage of the session, that since you are taking this as a lease, accounting standard states, even if you are taking that asset as a lease, you need to account the depreciation. And then the creating the vendor liability. Vendor liability is what? The vendor invoice. The lease liability will be debited and vendor will be credited. So now, if you understand a little bit of finance, then this lease liability, where it is coming, when we have created the initial recognition while accounting that asset as a lease, there we have credited the lease liability. Here we did not add any vendor. The reason is this is the liability I'm creating, and the liability of the vendor will be created each and every month. So here we have increased the liability of full value of fair value of asset. Now we are decreasing the liability, lease liability, while we are creating the invoice. That's how it works. And the vendor payment. Vendor payment is a normal. It's not part of asset leasing. When the invoice is created in vendor, then you can follow the normal process of paying the vendor. Now, if you record the balance reversal, if record, like you can reverse this like this way. This will calculate the reversal. I will not spend a lot of time in reversal because this is a. But does now understand, if you have accounted some right of use asset lease liability, you have created lease terms, and after some time or 6 months or 7 months, that lessor comes and say I need to change the lease liability or payment schedule and all schedule. Okay, that also is possible. It's not like that system will not allow you to do that. You can do that as well. So now I will talk about the initial recognition in detail. So initial recognition is what? Like I mentioned, when we account or when we start the asset, we need to post an entry called right to asset debit and lease liability credit. So it is the formula of initial recognition: right to use asset equal to lease liability plus other cost, initial cost, installation cost. And lease liability is what? Equal to present value of future lease payments plus residual guarantee value. You don't need to now not required to go into the residual guarantee value. Once you are comfortable working with asset leasing, then you explore this what is residual guarantee value. But now you understand there is a concept. The calculation is present value of future lease present payments plus residual value guarantee. Present value of future lease payments. How this is calculated? Like the same way I was mentioning, that if I'm paying 100 per month, that doesn't mean the same value, the 100 will be the same value as 100 after 24 months. That is how we need to get the future lease payment or present value. We say it NPV value in accounts. But really I'm mentioning, you don't need to check this formula. You don't need to be Einstein on this. So formula is like PV equal to FV, and then PV equal to present value, FV equal to future value, R rate of return, N is number of periods. These are just a visual representation I tried to explain. If required, you can just explore this formula. Okay, I will not talk about this 124, but it is a calculation of NPV value. And then I've tried to explain how this will look like after 24 months, the present value. Say I have said that I will pay 100 each month for 24 months. right? 1 minute. Okay, sorry. So I say that 100 I will be paying for 24 months. So if I need to calculate the fair value or right to asset value of the asset, that will be not 2400, because like I mentioned that 100 is not same 100 after 24 months. So if you see, this present value is decreasing each and every month. So after 24 months, the present value will be $85. Like the same thing, if you compare, if you try to understand, now you have, like I mentioned, you are paying a loan amount of $100 each month, and you will be paying the same $100 if you are, I mean, as per the agreed terms, if you are paying the loan amount of $100 after 24 months, that means you are paying less and not paying the same 100. I hope I've been able to make you understand this. So this is the PV value, present value of future lease payment. So when you are doing this initial recognition, I cannot, make this asset as initial or capitalization in one word. Though capitalization is a not a correct word, but if you have not worked with the asset in asset leasing, you just try to understand it's similar to capitalization. But in fixed asset, the capitalization we do straightforward. If it is 2400, then 2400 will be capitalized. But in the asset leasing, we cannot make the capitalization or right to use asset as 2400. The reason is this present value of future lease payment. So this is the 8% per annum calculation. We have calculated this. So interest expenses is what? This is the percentage we have accounted that we will be accounted as expenses, and the tool is liability. So okay, so interest equal to opening balance of lease liability into implicit rate. Closing lease liability is equal to opening lease liability plus interest rate minus lease payment. Lease liability schedule. So now these things, why we am showing you, if I don't have the asset leasing module, then these things I have to do, or organization need to do this complex calculation in Excel sheet. Okay, now this is part of the lease liability schedule. This is a calculation we have made in this Excel sheet, but this same thing will be happening in Dynamics. Depreciation expenses also will be calculated. Here is one important thing is, as per the accounting standard, that this depreciation will be in a SLM method. There will be no percentage of depreciation of in asset leasing. It will always be a SLM method. Okay. Depreciation is equal to right to use divided by number of lease periods. Straightforward depreciation, the same way we calculate or we do this in fixed asset module. Depreciation schedule also, this is a calculation I've tried to explain. Now we will notice in each and every page, you will notice the 2211 as a last step. The reason is, now you will question me that I am paying this 100 per month for 24 months, but why I am showing this 2211? The reason I have explained that I cannot make, or I cannot state that asset value will be 2400 after, or the lease value will be 2400 after 24 months, because of the present value calculation. It's always will be 2211.07. Now I will talk about the setups. Before I talk about the setups, this lease setups is almost same as same as fixed asset module. In fixed asset, we create fixed asset books. In lease asset leasing, we create lease books. In fixed asset, we create fixed asset groups, but in asset leasing, we create lease book groups. And then we we make this as a, or link this book and group. That's exactly same thing we do in fixed asset model. Parameters and postings I will talk about in detail. So lease book, like this, it will show like this. I will not explain it because I am going to show you a demo. So this will how it will look like in while we create the books. Lease group, that's how it will create. That's how it will look like in system. Linking book and group, and then parameters. So then parameters, this lease setup, we will see the journal names, which I will show you in system. Postings is kind of posting profile, what how you do in fixed asset module. Like you see lease accounts and book type is IFRS 16. You can add some main account for operating and finance lease as both. Now the main part, 365 demo. So as of now, whatever I have explained, I have tried to explain the basic things. I have tried to explain or make you understand try to make you, understand or make you comfortable what is asset leasing, because a lot of people doesn't know, who is not specifically from the core finance area. They always try to understand what is asset leasing. So that is all about asset leasing. In asset leasing, the main part is the even if you are taking that organization is taking that asset as a lease, it doesn't matter that that will be an expense to vendor account. It will always be a normal asset leasing, calculation, depreciation, interest expenses, capitalization kind of thing as per the accounting standard. Now I will quickly go to the demo. So this is my system. Before I do anything in the system, if you don't know, then you will say, where is asset leasing? See, if I check this one, there is no asset. Sorry, there is asset leasing module, but if you are opening the system, this asset leasing module will not be there. So for that, we need to go to system administration. We need to go to feature management, and the feature management, from the feature management, there will be a feature called asset leasing. You need to enable it, and the whole module will be available. This is the asset leasing module. I have enabled this. So now I will go to asset leasing module. So these are the, very likely very similar to these other modules. Like there will be some transaction, there will be some period activity, there will be some inquiries and report and setup. So I will talk about the setup first. Like I mentioned, first thing we need to do is setup books. So while we create the books, we can mention that these books belongs to which accounting framework. So we have the option called IFRS 16, AS 8422 cash basis, which is not very likely to happen this cash basis, and the AS 840 IAS 17. So these are the possibilities we have in system. Another setup we have, like we mentioned, like we in fixed asset module, we can create other layer as well. Here as well, we can do that. Lease type, like I mentioned, there is two type: finance and operating. There will be automatic. So automatic means what? You have some criteria mentioned here, and based on the criteria, when you account a lease, system will automatically understand that this is the IFRS 16 and this is the operating, or this is a finance lease. But if you want to specifically mention this book will always will be finance or operating, you can mention it. Here one important part is that pay to vendor. Pay to vendor means if you don't make it enabled, then the liability of the vendor invoice will automatically not will not be created automatically from the system. It will be a ledger entry will come into the picture. This is one part. And then we need to create a group. This way the interface is quite different than the fixed asset, but like this is very similar to the fixed asset. So I have created two buildings, two groups, and then after that I need to link the books with the group. That's done. And now it's about the parameters. The parameter, the first thing you need to do is these journal names. Like I mentioned in my PPT, there will be quite of journal like initial recognition journal, invoice journal name, lease journal name, lease modification journal name. So these you need to create. If you want, you can select same journal name anywhere, everywhere, or if you want to segregate between journal names so that it will be easier for you to understand which for this voucher, which for which lease journal, you can do that as well. After that, I will not talk about this general part. Is very cosmetic, and based on the parameter like other module will also have. You allow manual classification override, allow depreciation reversion on closed book, allow deletion of confirmed leases and all. Now I will talk about the posting profile. Posting profile, unlike the fixed asset module, here posting profile is the parameter option. But in fixed asset module, we have this posting profile in the other form as well. But here, Microsoft has tried to make everything in one page. So posting profile is very, very similar like fixed asset module. In asset leasing, we just select lease asset, then this now combination we need to create, and we have a good functionality for finance lease. If it is a finance lease, this account will be accounted. If it is operating lease, this account will be accounted. I can make combination with book, group and everything. It's very similar to fixed asset. And similarly, lease liability, I need to select, and these are the possibilities, or these are the posting profile in the lease asset module. But for now, we need lease asset account, lease liability, short-term liability, interest expenses, depreciation expenses. Okay, so I have given each and every account in this posting profile, and then I will now talk about some workflow. So in asset leasing module, you have three workflow possibilities as part of standard, which is lease adjustment, lease workflow, and lease termination workflow. Lease workflow is whenever you are creating a lease summary, you can create a workflow. It will not directly create the lease, and someone will come and approve it, and then it will work. Lease adjustment is, like I mentioned somewhere, that in the session, that if you want to adjust, that this workflow will work. And lease termination, that after some time organization decide I will need to terminate the lease, that workflow will work. Okay, now I will go to asset leasing once again. It is closed. Okay, now I will go to lease summary. So this lease summary is like a creation of lease. Creation of lease means as of now, till now, whatever I was talking, the lease agreement and all, everything I will be creating from here. I will create new. Now I am creating the lease. The lessor is creating a lease in Dynamics from the lessee is creating the lease in Dynamics as per the agreed terms from the lessor. So I will type Hyderabad session lease. I will give some fair value of the asset, say suppose 2211, which we have discussed. I will give the borrowing rate 8%. Compounding interval is monthly, quarterly, it doesn't matter. I can keep it. Is compounding means when the interest will be compounded, yearly, monthly, or what? I will keep it monthly. Asset useful life, say suppose 24 months. Okay, main part. If you want to keep this possibility for transfer of ownership, you can click on yes. Otherwise, you can, by default it will be no. Now the main part is lease group. I will select building. Annuity type, if you select annuity type due, it will not create a vendor liability, it will create a ledger. But if you create ordinary annuity, if it will create the vendor invoice. Now I can give RNC and everything. So I will select the vendor account. From vendor means lessor. I will select this vendor, and here I can select fixed asset number as well if I want, but that is not mandatory. I will select lease start date from May, and these are all optional. I will select. So if I go to my PPT, so I have talked about this. No, sorry. Depreciation and everything, right? So where is that calculation? So this one, these are the agreed terms. Payment terms 100 each month. If I go here, payment terms, period interval is months, period is 24 months. Okay, automatically the end date will be calculated by system. Payment frequency is monthly, and payment amount is $100. That's it. And if I go to fair value, like this, I have added here, and useful life 10 years. This is an example. Implicit rate is 8% I have given. So now you will understand, it's part of asset leasing. A user or you don't need to do anything. You just need to take the asset leasing agreed terms in one hand, and you need to just put that input from the agreed terms in this lease summary, and based on that, system will do everything for you. So now I have added all the agreed terms in this page. I will now click create schedules, and this is the automation. System will calculate as per the accounting standard. Okay, now I will go to books. Now I will have payment schedule, liability amortization schedule, asset depreciation schedule, and expense schedule. Like I mentioned, the first entry will be initial recognition here. But if you notice, the initial recognition is disabled. Why? The system wants me or the organization or the user to confirm the schedule, whether this is wrong or right. So now see, so the same way which I have shown you here, The complex calculation which we were doing in the Excel, system is doing on behalf of you. See, for period 1, the present value 99.34, and if you see the period 24, the present value will be 85.26 based on the calculation of the value, and this is the fair value which you have added. So system has calculated automatically everything in the system. What I need to do, I need to just calculate confirm schedule. That's done. User don't need to do anything in the system. Now, if you notice, once I confirmed it, this initial recognition is enabled. Now, what I will do, I will go to initial recognition. See, asset leasing journal created for this. I can go to this asset leasing journals from here. I can just take a look whether it is correct or not. Now, see exactly same thing I was talking. The right of use asset will be debit, and lease liability will be credited. Since it is a finance, this is coming as finance lease liability. So here you see right to use asset debit to lease liability. The same thing system has created automatically. I will just click on post, and my work is done. Okay, and now I have another interest expenses where those are here. If you go to liability amortization schedule, you will see this calculation also created by system automatically. I will just review it. I will click on create journal, and you will notice this journal automatically created in the system. I will go to this journal. I will just review it, and now, okay, before I review it, I will go to lines. I will see this debit, credit, enter the expenses, and lease obligation accounting. I will click on post. Okay, system is just a minute. Am I still audible, Ritika?
Yes, Ramit, you're audible.
Okay. I thought my internet is disconnected. That's fine.
No, no, it's not. You. I mean, I can hear you since the beginning, so it's fine. Please continue.
Okay. Just a minute. My system got slower. Let's see. Let's wait for a couple of seconds. If it does not work, I will move to another environment. I think, okay. Let's check another environment. No, I think it's the internet. Okay. Now it is working. Thank God. So now I will click on post. I was here. I was about to post it. We'll post it. It's done. I will go back in the lease summary. Okay, I think it's got refreshed. I will go to asset leasing module and lease summary. Okay, this is my lease. I will click on books, and here I can see all the journals from here, asset leasing journals. You will notice all the journals which you have posted, lease like initial recognition journal, monthly lease journal, had posted or not, everything you will be able to see. In liability amortization schedule also, you will be able to see whether it is posted or not. So as you see, this is schedule, this journal number, and it's posted. You can click, you can also reverse it. Now we have completed the initial recognition. Now we will complete the depreciation schedule. we'll go to the asset depreciation schedule. Like I mentioned, it will be SLM method. Depreciation also system has been created, and system has given me the possibility. I will click on create journal, and the journal is created. It is there. From here also I can click on journal number, and also I can go to this asset leasing journal. Here you will see monthly lease journal posted equal to no. I will just see whether this is correct or not. It is correct. Depreciation of right of use it debit, accumulated depreciation as a credit. I will click on post. That's done. Okay. And if I go to invoice journals, I don't have any invoice journal. Let me check one thing. This group books. Okay, fine. But had it been, posted any invoice journal, it would have gone to their invoice journal, and that invoice journal amount, the invoice number and all, it would have gone to the same vendor account here, but which I have selected here. I will go to this vendor account. I will show you which I have posted already today. If I click on transactions, click on open. So now if you see, I have already posted a lease payment journal or invoice I have booked from the asset leasing module. You will notice this is the invoice have been created automatically by the system here, and the description will come as finance lease payment and what is the amount of the payment. Now from here everything is normal, like you can select this invoice and pay this to the vendor, and in the next month when the time comes, you will again go to the amortization schedule, you click on create journal, you create on depreciation journal, and it's done. Now, it will be a question or curiosity in your mind that every time or a big organization like XYZ, they may have thousands of or hundreds of leads, right? So what Ramit is sharing, that I need to go to this payment schedule each and every time, and I will click create journal. But that is for some organization who has 10, 20, 30 leads, that is possible. But for organization like big organizations, they might not you know like it, because that is a huge activity they need to do. Even if I am giving the automation, but still I am saying that okay, the calculation I will do, but journal you have to come and post. So the answer is we have batch posting as well. If you collapse it, I will go to periodic, and here you have batch journal creation. From here, you can select your batch criteria, like which schedule you want to automate, like initial recognition, payment schedule, liability amount schedule, amortization schedule, and you can make a batch from the system. So ideally, if I go with the batch, then everything is automated or automation. Like I just need to put the agreed terms on the lease when I'm creating the lease, and after that system will automatically create that lease schedule, payment schedule, everything, which for one time when the user is creating, you need to just validate and confirm it. Like this where I've come from, you need to confirm it, and after that everything will be taken care by the system, and it will auto post each and every month or as per the payment schedule agreed terms. Okay, so if you want to adjust, you can click on adjust book. If you want to terminate, you can also terminate this lease. So termination proposal, adjustment wizard, lease version is history. Even if you are enabling, say I think I have done some adjustment in this lease, isn't it? No, I think somewhere I have done this. So if you are adjusting, that doesn't mean the previous version of the lease which was there, it will lose. You will still be able to see the lease version history from here. Like if you remembered in the purchase order page and sales order page, if you make some changes after confirming, that confirmation version is still there in the system. The same way it is also there. If you want to see the version, you can also see the version from this module. Okay. And while I'm talking about workflow, I will once again go to the workflow. Now you can relate for which activity you can have a workflow as per system. Lease adjustment, when you are doing the lease adjustment after recognition and payment. Lease workflow, when you create the lease, then you can have this workflow. Sorry. And lease termination workflow. So these three is the standard workflow we have. And if you want to see some reports, you can still go some report here. Under lease report is 5 years undiscounted payment forecast, lease movement, lease modification, lease commencements, lease balance forecast, asset movement, and everything. Under disclosure, you will have some difference report, gap, cash flow report, and all. Okay, that's all about the whole asset leasing module. I just talked about the basic happy path, but I'm sure you will get some situation where you need to explore it further. If if you're unable to do that, you can connect with me, I will help you. Or I don't think if you spend some time on it today, you will be able to understand the asset leasing module. The reason I've started started this session by saying that asset leasing is most easiest module I've ever seen. That's how it's easy. You just need to go to the list summary, you just need to add the agreed terms, and system will do the things for you. You don't need to, you just need to sit back and relax. Okay, of course there will be situation there manual activity will be required, but that is part of our life. It's not that easy. Every time we have some exception situation, we will need to work on it. But if this happy path, that is how it is. Okay, so now I will go to my workflow. Where is my workflow? Sorry, not workflow, PPT. So my demo is done. Now I will talk about some important things which are not possible in asset leasing, right? If I talk about good things, I will also need to give some heads up that which is not possible in system. Mr. Laser, asset leasing modules is not used for Mr. Laser accounting. The reason why, Mr. Laser is basically is a subcontracting kind of thing, or Mr. Laser is the owner. So Mr. Laser is actually not doing anything in the system part as part of depreciation, initial recognition. He's not doing anything. He's just giving the asset as a lease, and he is just maintaining some I would say subscription billing method or event based method. Okay, for that, if you ask me, then why, then what Mr. Laser will do, we have a functionality, nice functionality called subscription billing that can be explored, or that can be used for Mr. Laser. Okay, calculation and schedules preparation will be out of D65. Calculation and schedule means, uh, how I say this, agreed terms. Agreed terms means that Laser is saying I will give this as part of list 12 months or 24 months or 30 months. This agreed terms will not be part of D65. Mr. Laser has to say it is my agreed terms, I will give this as a lease. Or Mr. Lacy has to say, okay, I need this building for my business for next 10 years. So that calculation, automatic calculation of 10 years or 20 years, that's agreed terms will not be part of D65. D65, you need to bring the agreed terms, you need to put that input from the agreed terms in the system, and system will automatically calculate everything in the system. So that's it for my session. I hope you have learned something new today. If you have any question, you can ask. I can keep this in chat, or can wrap up. Over to you, Ritika and Yash.
Thank you, Ramit. That was a really interesting session. For even, I mean, I haven't worked with finance and operations much in the past, but I think after listening to you, I do want to try it and look at the things that exist. So thank you so much for coming here today. I don't see any questions on the chat right now, so I'll share your social media. links here so the people can reach out to you, as this will be broadcasted on YouTube. So I'm sure there will be questions flowing to you in some time.
Great, great, awesome.
Okay, perfect. So with that, I think we can conclude our meetup for today. Thank you so much, Ramit, for coming, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining and making it a great success. So we'll meet next month again for our June meetup with another set of sessions and other speakers. So stay tuned. And at any point of time, if you think there is something you would like to share with the community, please do not hesitate to reach out to me and Yash, and we can help accommodate a session for you in one of our coming meetups. So, thank you everybody for joining. That's it for today. Have a nice weekend. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Yep.